Wasn't the music wonderful? And we give God credit for the scriptures, but the readers all read beautifully. You know, what is being proclaimed this night, we really need to hear it every night, not just once a year. Because when you look at that first reading about Genesis and how beautiful the world is, look at what a mess we made of it. You know, and I was thinking about this, and I thought, should I bring this up? Won't that be a downer? And go, no, wait a minute. We're talking about dying and rising. You know, it is possible throughout the scriptures, as we see, for human beings to fail, and to fail to follow God, and to fail to be godly, and to fail to do good for one another. And what we've done with the beautiful, beautiful earth, you know, is that we've forgotten how holy it was, or it still is. But what a beautiful miracle everything is. Everything. And when we hear that scripture from Genesis saying, see, I give you all of this. Every seed-bearing plant, every animal, every bird, every fish in the sea, all creatures that crawl or fly across the face of the earth. And it says, have dominion over it. And then what happened is then God made us in his image and likeness. Man and woman in the image and likeness of God. Man and woman, he created them. And we forget how holy we are as a creature of God. Not just the holiness of the beautiful earth, but the holiness of each person, each soul. And that's why when people turned away from God's will, and when they then profaned not only his world and not only his people, but they profaned his holy name. And so what happened is God eventually said, they're dead. They're a very sinful people. They're never going to be able to get out of this hole by themselves. You go down there and take away that punishment. And then he'll give them a new life. And instead of being dead, you know, because of sin, they will have a new heart and a new mind and a new spirit within them. And then they will be dead, but they'll be dead to sin. They'll be dead to sin. They will be alive for God and for one another. And instead of profaning God's holy name, they will respect it and keep it holy. In the 70s, there was a short-lived, you can't call it a sitcom, although it did have some comedy in it. But it was, I don't know if anybody here might remember it. It didn't last very long. It was called Nothing Sacred. Anybody remember that? Okay, thank you very much. Good, you know. Another old person, thank you for that. Nothing Sacred. And it began, you know, with a brick wall and a littered street. And there was graffiti, and the graffiti said, nothing. And then what happened is someone came along and wrote, sacred. But because the title of it was called Nothing Sacred, a lot of people got really upset about it, and they thought that it was going to be an affront to the Catholic Church because it was set in a Catholic church. It was a parish scene. And what happened is the day-to-day, you know, living and dying of people in the parish, and they're searching for faith and meaning in God. And some of the things fell apart. Yeah, one of the very first things that they had was they started with, it was a newly ordained deacon, and he was going to become a priest. And so what happened is he was planning his first Mass. How many people remember this? I won't have to go into it if you already know what it is. But anyway, what happened is he was looking for, you know, a wonderful, wonderful, perfect celebration. And he spent time, you know, on making sure everything was the way it should be. And then he found out that one of the lectors had a stutter. And suddenly his whole world came crashing down. Until what happened is the pastor spoke to him and he said, you've got to understand what you are beginning to do in this ordination. It's to serve others, not to be served. And then what happened is, instead of disappointing the young man who was so happy to be a minister in the church despite his stutter, you know, the newly about to be ordained, invited him And when he heard him read, it was perhaps more beautiful than people who read more easily, because he knew how much the guy had practiced and how much he had put into it and how much it meant to him to be doing this. And since it's happened, when we only focus on ourselves, we forget how holy everybody else is, even imperfect people, sinful people. In which case, we're all in the same boat, the same bucket, the same basket, and we have been saved. We have been given a new lease on life. And I think that what we should remember is that when we say nothing, we have to remember sacred. The world, we in it, God's purpose, His word, His direction, His commandments, His holy name. And if we could remember that every night, well, there's a song which is, I see clouds of blue, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I say to myself, what a wonderful world. That's right. If we could remember how sacred everything is, we'd all be different. And that's what Ezekiel says about a new heart, a new soul, a new mind. I'll take away their stony hearts and put a heart of flesh in there. And this is what salvation means.